Hi, and welcome to Learning JavaScript, a 3-session tutorial offered to you by the Clifton Park Half Moon Library. Hopefully, you've taken my previous 2 tutorials. The first one was in HTML, and the one that's just finishing up now is in CSS. And as a complement to those 2 tutorials, I'll finish up with JavaScript. So if you haven't taken the HTML and the CSS tutorials, the text editor that I'm using for these programming languages is I'm just using simple Notepad. If you have a Windows computer, Notepad's always installed and accessible to you. If you're using Mac, I forget what the text editor is on a Mac, but we're going to be using a Windows machine. So we'll be writing all our programs in Notepad. So in the previous tutorials, we wrote our programs in Notepad for HTML and for CSS. So with JavaScript, JavaScript's a programming language, and it's the language of HTML and the web. And at this time, I believe JavaScript is the #1 most used programming language out there right now. Some people might mix up JavaScript with Java, and they're completely different languages. JavaScript is client side, and Java is server side. So, they're different languages. So just because they have Java in their names, just understand that they're different. And the reason why JavaScript is so heavily used is that it's the preferred language for creating web pages and web applications. So the way I want you to look at web pages and web development is to look at HTML as like the building blocks of a web page. It's your foundation. It's what displays the content of your web page. And to look at CSS, you want to see CSS as the layout of your web page. It's what adds the cosmetics to your pages. And then JavaScript, you want to look at it as the behavior. It provides the behavior of your web pages. It makes your web pages dynamic, so they can do all kinds of things. So that's how the 3 languages go together: HTML, CSS, and then JavaScript. And so here are some commonly asked questions about JavaScript, okay? How do I get JavaScript? Where can I download JavaScript? Is JavaScript free? Right. So with JavaScript, you don't have to get or download JavaScript. It's not like Python where you have to download Python onto your computer for you to be able to use it. JavaScript's already running in your browser on your computer, or on your tablet, or on your phone, whatever. And it's free to use for everyone. So it's open source. So let's talk about how you can output JavaScript. So with JavaScript, you can use inner HTML, which is, if you look off to the left, is what we were using previously. And you can see it inside the functions that we created. So inside the my function, we've got document.getElement by ID, demo.innerHTML. And what that does is it allows you to access an HTML element in JavaScript, and you access the element by using document.getElement by ID, and you provide it an ID inside the parentheses. And in this case, we're using demo as the ID. And the ID attribute defines the HTML element. The inner HTML property defines the HTML content. So if you look inside the first function, so by referencing an HTML element, in this case, the ID of demo is inside the element, the HTML element of P, which is the paragraph element. And it's providing content using inner HTML. It provides content that gets dumped inside of this paragraph tag. So that's how we use inner HTML, and that's one way to produce output using JavaScript. The next way is using something called document.write. So let me show you that. Well, first, why don't I do an example of inner HTML? So I'll do a file, save as, and I will change my save as type to all files. I'm going to call this, I'll call it inner HTML.html. Inner HTML. Okay, so I changed my file name. So now I'm not going to have a function. I have to use the script tags, but I don't need a function. So I'll take these out. All right, and also P equals P has an attribute of ID, and it is equal to demo. And we're not going to have any content in our paragraph tags. We're going to provide the content by using the JavaScript inner HTML. So inside our script tags, we'll do a document.getElement by ID, parentheses, and then the ID is going to be called demo. And then dot inner HTML. HTML is capitalized, and that is going to, and then we're going to provide the content. So how about inner All right, so document.getElement by ID demo.innerHTML equals innerHTML output. And I believe this has to be, this is a string, so you have to surround it with double quotes. And then don't forget with JavaScript, we always try to end with a semicolon. So if I run this now, what will happen is I've got a paragraph tag which has the ID equals demo, but it's got no content, right? There's nothing in between the paragraph tags. And when it comes down to the script tags, it'll say, okay, call that HTML element by ID, and the ID whatever element has the demo ID. Using inner HTML, we're gonna dump in the content inner HTML output. How about using inner HTML output? All right. So I will do a file save, and I'll go down to Explorer, and I'll run this file. And let's see, JavaScript. I'll double click on inner HTML.html. Web page comes up. Oh, because I still have those functions, or the buttons still calling functions, so I can get rid of those. And I've got a p tag demo inner HTML. Doesn't seem to like it too much. I got an H1. Oh no, there it is. Okay, let me refresh. So do a file save. I'll refresh the page. Okay, so I've got an H1 tag that says a web page, right? But then I've got a paragraph tag that has no content. But using JavaScript down here, I load up the content that says using inner HTML output, and that's what gets displayed. So that's it for JavaScript output using inner HTML. Now we're going to move on to, so I'll do a file save as. We're going to move on to, if I can find it, the next way to output information using JavaScript, and that is the document.write. Document.write can be used to test out your code. So I'll do a save as, change my file type, and this one I'm going to call the doc and write.html. And now I have new file, so I've got my H1, I've got my P, and instead of doing document.getElement by ID .inner HTML, what I'll do is simply do document.write. And then inside the parentheses, I'll say using document.write output. Okay, and that has to be closed in with a parenthesis. All right, so the command is document dot calls the method write. So document dot write parentheses, and then the arguments we're passing are the string using document dot write output. And that using document dot write output will get loaded up here into the p tag, which is not displaying any content. So I'll do a file save, and then I'll have to go out here to do a right click on Start, File Explorer, and I will double click on this new file, which is called document.write .html, double click, and you look at my browser and it says using document, the paragraph tags, they're using document write output. So it's pretty, it's just another way to output information using JavaScript. So I want to talk to you about the third way to output info. And that is a window alert, window dot alert. So I will do a file and I'll do save as. Change my save as type to all files, and here I will call this, I'll call it window alert. HTML. So now I have a new file. So my program can pretty much stay the same, except for the JavaScript I'm going to change. So now instead of using document.write, I'm going to use window.alert. Alert. And then in parentheses, I'll say using window. I'll say using window.alert output. Click on file, do save. And then I have to open up a brand new program, which is window alert. Go into my JavaScript folder, double click on window alert, and a pop-up window appears. This page says using window.alert output. And you can click, it'll give you an OK button in the lower right-hand corner. Click that and it'll make the page go away. It will make the window alert go away. This is very handy if you're trying to debug your program. And you want, or if you're trying to give, have your web page have a pop-up window just to alert the user that they have to make a choice, or they have to make a decision about the web page. Remember, JavaScript, using JavaScript makes your web pages dynamic. It makes them interactive with the user. Whereas HTML pages are static pages by themselves, and there is no interaction really. So now the final form of output, the fourth form, I'll do a save as, and let's see, JavaScript. And files. And the final way is console.log, which I use personally all the time. It's really handy for trying to debug your program in JavaScript. It's just super handy. So console.log. So call it console.log.html. And what I'll do is I'll change window.alert. Before I go, before I leave window.alert, I do want you to know the window, in this case, the window keyword is actually optional because it defaults to window. So you can have just window, or you can have just alert, and then put the text that you want in the pop-up window. So I will do a file. Anyway, you don't have to do window.alert. So for console.log, we'll say using console.log output, and I'll do a file save, right click on File Explorer, and I'll get rid of some of these. And right click, File Explorer, JavaScript, and I'll click on console.log.html, and web page comes up. So with console.log, the way to see the output, you have to go into developer option, and it depends on what kind of browser you're using. So if you look off to the right, I'm using the web browser Chrome, and inside this page, I've got, to the left, I have my web page and what gets displayed. To the right, I have my my developer console. So what I'll do is I'll close this out and I'll show you how I got to it. You can hit PF12, or you can hit in Chrome, or you can hit this little menu bar, and then you go down to more tools, and then off the left you can do developer tools. And there's several tabs inside the developer tool, like elements shows the different HTML elements in my program. If you look off to the way over to the left in my notepad session, it's got the same HTML elements that my program does. But if you click on console, it'll show using console.log output, and that's what I wanted displayed in my console.log. So this is how you see output when you're using the console, the JavaScript console.log. You have to go out to the developer tool and click on the console tab, and that's what will get displayed. So if I run my program again, I'll see using console.log output again. And there it is. All right. So when I refresh it, it just displays it once again. And off to the right in my developer tool, it tells me console.log, console.log.html, the file name, line 11 is where the console.log is being displayed. So the developer tool becomes really handy, especially when you start writing dynamic programs. So that was the fourth way to use JavaScript output. So let's talk about, briefly talk about JavaScript syntax. So these syntax are the rules of the programming language that you're working with. So I'll do a file, save as, and I'm going to call this new file syntax.html, and let's see. So with JavaScript, this. Let's first tell you about JavaScript values. So fixed values are called literals, and variable values are called variables. So with literals, Only thing you have to keep in mind is that numbers are written with or without decimals. All right, so you should have 10.50, or you should have 100 or 199. And so face value literals with strings have to be surrounded by either double quotes, or they have to be surrounded by single quotes. Okay. Now, as far as variables go, in JavaScript, you have to you declare a variable by using the keyword var. So var space, and then say you want to do a variable named x, semicolon. So now you've declared a variable named x. And if I want to give a variable a value, I should do it right where I'm defining it. That it should be var x equals 5, semicolon, semicolon, or it could be you can do var y, semicolon, and then do y equals 18, semicolon. All right, so that's how you define a variable, by using the keyword var, and then give it a variable name, and then you assign a value to it by using the equal sign. So I should have a variable named var, so I do var and f name for first name, right? Equals, and then I would do single quotes. I like to use single quotes in JavaScript. So single quotes, Scott, single quote, and finish it with semicolon. So I've declared a variable named f name. I've given it a value of the string Scott. So JavaScript operators. Operators are the plus sign, the minus sign, the asterisk for multiplication, and the / for division. Just like in pretty much all programming languages, those are the operators that we use. Let's see. The assignment operator is the equal sign, just like what we did up here when we declared a variable. To assign a value to that variable, so I declared a variable named x. I assigned a value to it of 5 by using the equal sign. If you have multiple operations, you want to use parentheses around the operations. So if I had 5 plus 2 times 8. If I wanted to do that, and I wanted 5 plus 2 to be added first, then I would have to do parentheses around the 5 and the 2. When you're doing concatenation in JavaScript, you use the plus sign. So if I was going to concatenate, say I created a variable named var, and I'll call this variable name full name equals, and then so I'll call this person John. I'll do a plus sign for concatenation. Then I want a space, another plus sign, and then finally I'll do Smith and ended with semicolon. So now the full name, the variable name, full name would be John J. Smith. That's the value that the variable full name would have. Okay, so that's a general overview of the JavaScript syntax. Let's quickly move on to how to do comments in JavaScript. So if I want to do a single line comment, whether I want to use the comment to add notes to my program, or I want to take out a line of code for testing purposes, a single line comment is just // So if you look at the very bottom, I've commented out the declaration of the variable name, full name, and all I did was put a // in front of it. Now say I had multiple lines of code that I wanted to comment out. So if you look at the very top of the Notepad section on the left, the way to do multiple lines of commenting would be the /**. So say I want to take out the line 10.50, the line 199, and the line my text and my text. So the first 4 lines I want to take out. And the way to do it is you start with a / and you end with an */. So all 4 lines would be commented out. And the program, the computer wouldn't even look at them. So lines of code can also be used for notes. Comments can be used for notes. So I just have a single line that I want to comment, and you can say // this is a variable called named x with the value of 5. Okay, so you see this line, these 2 lines, just a single line comment line that I'm using as a note. So a lot of times in the very beginning of your program, you might have notes. You might have comments on how the date and who changed the program and what the change, brief overview of what the changes were. So you can use comments to have basically a change log of your program, so people can understand what's going on with the history of that program. So that's it for comments. Lastly tonight, let's talk about variables. So in JavaScript, like I said before, variables use the keyword var. And then the variable name, here's some rules for naming your variables. They have to be unique inside your program. If you call 2 variables by the same name, it's going to be very confusing for your program, and it can cause all kinds of problems. So variables can be short. They can be 1 word or 1 letter, like var x. is an example of just a single letter variable. They can be more descriptive, like age, bar age, or bar sum, or bar total cost. I use camel case when I'm naming things in different programming languages. Camel case is simply the first word is lowercase. So in this case, my variable is total cost. So the first word total is lowercase, and then every word after the first word, the first letter of that word is uppercase. And so that's called camel case, and it just allows you to be able to read the different words more easily inside a variable name. Let's see, names in JavaScript, names can contain letters, numbers, underscores, and dollar signs. So that's it. Letters, numbers, underscore, and dollar sign. So I should have total cost 33 underscore dollar sign today. Total cost 33 underscore dollar sign today. That would all be legitimate. Everything else is not. You can begin the name of a variable in JavaScript must begin with a letter. They can also begin with a dollar sign and an underscore, but we're not using that in this tutorial. I know, yeah, anyway. So just always start your variable names with, in this tutorial anyway, start them with a letter. Names are case sensitive. So if I name my variable total cost with an uppercase C, so that the name is camel case, then when I reference that variable name, it has to be exactly total uppercase C cost. It can't be, lowercase. I shouldn't say total cost because it's a capital T, and that's not how I named it. And reserved words like JavaScript keywords cannot be used as names. So, for example, I couldn't say var, and do you remember just a little while ago we used inner HTML. You couldn't name a variable inner HTML because it's a keyword in JavaScript. Just like I couldn't say var and I want to call my variable var. I couldn't say var because that's a keyword. So just an example. So really, there's not a whole lot of restrictions on the naming of variables. So you just have to use the keyword var, then you name it. So I'll just say name, and then use the assignment operator, which is the equal sign, to assign a value to your variable. Remember, variables are containers that hold data. So they're containers that you have to put a name to so they can be referenced, and then something goes inside them. So whether it's numbers or strings or formulas. So I should say var total equals 50 plus 10 semicolon to end it, and then if I reference that, the value inside of total, the variable named total, would be 60. So that's it for variables. This was kind of like an overview of the JavaScript language. So next session, like you said earlier, this is a 3-session tutorial. Tonight was the first session, but next 2 sessions, we'll be diving deeper into JavaScript and how to use it to make web pages come alive. So I hope you'll join me next session. And for all those that register with the Central Park Admin Library for this class called Learning JavaScript, I will be posting through Google Classroom different exercise assignments for you to do during the week before the next session. All right, so hope to see you next time. Thanks.